30 kilometre mark from the sea. The water here is virtually pure salt. By the time we've reached our destination this morning, we'll be another 20 kilometres up the river, by which time the water is brackish. This river is very tight. It changes directions 4 times a day, and this causes a certain amount of discoloration, as you can see, because every time the tide changes direction, it stirs up a certain amount of mud from the bottom. This phenomenon is called As we leave the main central business district, the first suburb we come to on our right is Moreton. The skyline is dominated by Suncorp Stadium, known as the Cauldron, home to our rugby league side, the Broncos, and our soccer team, the Roar. This is where the statue stands of Queensland's favourite son, Wally Lewis, a champion rugby player, also known as the Emperor. The busy roadway you can see running along the river on the right-hand side is Coronation Drive. That's the main thoroughfare leading out to the western suburbs of Brisbane, and that's where we're headed today, to an outer suburb called Victory Pocket. Funny name for a suburb, is the Castlemaine Brewery. If you look through the buildings on your right side, you can just see the distinctive 4X sign of the Castlemaine Brewery, and the tall chimney stack with the 4X logo on them. Unkind people from across the Tasman say that we call it 4X because we can't spell beer. Well, the joke's on the Kiwis because they own it. Yes, Castlemaine Brewery was bought by Lion Nathan of New Zealand a few years ago. Well, Kiwis, we don't mind if you can't spell, we still drink the beer. If you look across Coronation Drive to the right, you'll see a fuel column with the sandstone point chimneys on top. This is the Cook Terraces. They're best known as the Victorian terrace houses in Brisbane, and they were built in 1887 by Mr. Joseph Cook. Mr. Cook obviously felt that it was time the fledgling town of Brisbane had some proper houses like they have in England. Unfortunately for Mr. Cook, he went broke in the process, and the job of finishing was left to someone else. About 20 years ago, they were going to demolish the Cook Terraces, but the National Trust stepped in and saved the building from demolition. It is now an historic listed building. It has been refurbished and the Cook Terraces are now being used as an office block, and at this end of the terraces you will see one of our many fine restaurants. Now, speaking of restaurants, we're coming up to the area where once a famous bloke restaurant was on the minds of all Brisbaneites who were here at the time. This city virtually went underwater in January 2011, and the city suffered its worst damage with 67 suburbs swallowed by the floodwaters. 15,000 homes and businesses were completely swamped, and another 18,000 were partially damaged by floods. This also resulted in over 10 side of the river, where there stands a rather unusual sight. It's that pink tower with the silver cap on top. Now that's a gas cracking tower, and it stands as a kind of a memorial to the old gas. That gas cracking tower was left as a sort of a monument, and we think it's probably the only one of its kind in the world. It was built in Great Britain and brought out here in some 300 pieces to be assembled on site. Look on the right-hand side of the river, through the trees, the hospital, through the trees you can see an old house, a green place with a red roof. That is Moorlands. It's a sinister looking place with a sinister history. It was built in 1892 by the infamous Main family. The patriarch of that family was Patrick Main, a butcher who became very wealthy and was one of the original aldermen of the city of Brisbane. Patrick Main was actually a murderer, but was never brought to trial. He killed and dismembered a fellow called Robert Cox at Kangaroo Point in 1848, but watched another man hang for the deed. Because of his desperate need for salvation, Main actually confessed to the murder on his deathbed, and that stigma hung over the unfortunate. This is the regatta reach of the river, and that old hotel you can see up ahead of us occupied is part in Brisbane. In the 1893 floods, when that building was only 7 years old, the water went right up to the top balcony. In the 1974 floods, the river rose to the first floor balcony, and the 2011 floods covered the ground floor up to knee height, and also flooded the restaurant, which remained closed for 4 months, as well as the cafe, cellar bar and the gaming bar. The amusing government had to repeal the law. So ladies, thanks to those two, there was a blow struck the women's lid, and it happened right there at the Regatta Hotel. Oh, incidentally, one of those ladies was a Mrs. Thornton, whose daughter is the famous Australian actress Sigrid Thornton. The suburb on our right is Toowong. Toowong is named after those intrepid Chinese explorers, the Toowong brothers. You don't believe that, do you? I just made it up. In fact, Toowong gets its name from the call of male coal or storm bird. If you look to your left, you will see Orley Park in the suburb of Hill End. Hill End was originally known as Kurilpa, the same name as our newer bridge we passed under this morning. As I mentioned, it's an Aboriginal word meaning place of the giant rat. It now seems likely that the rats were actually kangaroos, which are still common in the area. That's not We're just passing 2 CityCab ferry terminals, one on each side of the river. We have a total of 15 such river ferry terminals which exist along the Brisbane River. The Brisbane City Council has built a number of cities here at St Lucia until 1946, some 20 years after the land was first made available. There are now some 30,000 students studying here, and they're administered to by some 4,200 staff each, total approximately 5,500 subjects. The university is well endowed with playing fields, as you can see, and the all-weather athletics track, which you might be able to see. And only carries pedestrians, push bikes and gas-operated buses. That's right, no cars.